the biggest questions that I have. Does Texas run the ball well enough to win a natty? I went and looked back at the 10 last national championships. I looked at how many yards per carry they averaged as a team. I looked at their highest rusher and how many yards per carry they averaged. And then I looked at Texas. So, guys, we'll go back starting at the beginning at the college football playoff era. 2014 Ohio State, as that team averaged 5.7 yards per carry. If you will notice on some of these, they're going to be a little bit higher. It's because a lot of them had running quarterbacks. That obviously helps out a lot. And that's the feather in the tip of, hey, I want Arch Manning to start. Honestly, that's the only feather in the cap if I want Arch Manning to start. Ezekiel Elliott himself averaged 7.9 yards per carry and 18 touchdowns. So he was phenomenal that year, and that was in 15 games. 2015, the Heisman Trophy winner, Derrick Henry, averaged 5.6 yards per carry. Alabama only averaged 4.7. Which I was surprised by. 2016 Clemson, this is the least, by the way, averaged 4.3 yards per carry as a team. Wayne Gallman averaged 4.9 yards per carry. Both of those are the least of national championship winning teams as a team and as the lead rusher. 2017 Alabama averaged 5.7 yards per carry. Damian Harris averaged 7.4 yards per carry, and they had Jalen Hurts on that team, who actually had the most carries on that team. I was surprised by that, but Damian Harris did lead yards-wise, and that's what I'm going with. I'm going with the yardage when I break down the highest rusher. Clemson averaged 6.6 yards per carry in 2018. Travis Etienne averaged 8.1 yards per carry in 2019. And I was kind of surprised by this. I thought this team, being with Joe Burrow and the guys at wide receiver, would have the least amount of rushing yards per carry. They did not. They averaged 4.9, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire was phenomenal, 6.6 yards per carry. 2020 Bama, 5 yards per carry. Najee Harris averaged 5.8. And then the next three are very surprising to me. When I looked at this, Georgia only averaged 5.3 yards per carry in 2021. Zamir White was the leading rusher with 856 yards at 5.4 yards per carry. But then they also had James Cook, who had 728 yards at 6.4 yards per carry. I included both of them because you had two guys over 700 yards. That's noteworthy to me. And then the next team had three guys over 500 yards. 2022, Georgia averaged 5.5 yards per carry. Kenny McIntosh. I don't know if anyone could have named that. Was the leading rusher for Georgia in 2022 with 829 yards. He averaged 5.5 yards per carry, so right on the number as a team. DeJuan Edwards had 769 yards, 5.5 yards per carry. And Kendall Milton had 592 yards, 7 yards per carry. Honestly, he was probably the best running back on the team. Obviously, him being the only one that's still in the NFL, I believe. Michigan, again, surprising, 4.5 yards per carry. But again, they stuck to the run. That was their identity. They were not going to run away from it. Pun intended, I guess. Blake Corum, 4.8 yards per carry, so he's a little bit better than the average. So then I went in, saw what Texas was doing. And this is why it is a concern for me, guys. I knew it's worse than I thought. It really is. So the average for a national championship team is 5.22 yards per carry. The highest running back average, so your leading rusher, I should say that. The leading rusher on every team averaged 6.2 yards per carry. Texas right now averages 5 yards per carry, which isn't that bad as a team compared to 5.22, but that's still 0.2 of a yard behind. And also, you guys got to realize Arch Manning contributes to that. Sacks are taken away. So Quinn Ewers is going to take away from that when he comes back in. So that's only going to get worse as a team, most likely, unless someone in the running back room really picks up the slack. But this is the bad thing. The leading rusher right now is Jaden Blue. He averages 4.7 yards per carry. Guys, that is a yard and a half worse than every leading rusher on average of the last 10 national championships team. A yard and a half worse. That is not good enough. Someone is going to have to step up. Even if you went with Trey Wisner, let's hypothetically say he leads the team in rushing yards at the end of the year. That is 5 yards per carry that he is averaging. And that was the worst part of our schedule. That's what I'm saying. We've done this first, the worst part of our schedule. It's only going to get harder. And if he averages 5, that's still 1.2 yards less than the average. That's not good enough. This has to get better, whether it be the push from the offensive line, someone steps up in the running back room, or I said this going into the season. I knew Quinn was going to have to put on his cape and have like a Mac Jones year, a Joe Burrow year, or even 2016 Clemson, a Deshaun Watson year. Do I think Quinn is capable of that? Absolutely, I do. But I'd rather it not be on his shoulders because, again, we're relying on a guy with a health problem too. So there's so many questions there, guys. We just need to get better in the running game. Either Sark has to dial it up a little better, we need more push, or someone else has to step up. Whatever it is, it has to get better. It just does. Like I said, the average on a national championship team is 5.22. The highest leading rusher on a national championship team is 6.2 yards per carry. Right now, we're at 5 as a team, which I think is good enough. If that stays, that is good enough. But the problem, again, Arch isn't going to be there, and the sack numbers will count against that with Quinn Ewers, just as they did for everyone else on this list. And then Jaden Blue's only at 4.7 yards per carry. That's a yard and a half difference between the average of every other team in the national championship, or that won a national championship. So it's not good enough right now, guys. It just isn't. And I'm sorry if that hurts your opinion or hurts your feelings or whatever, because for whatever reason, I just have to be positive about everything. I'm not going to do that. My goal for this team, because I've seen the landscape of college football and I've seen the talent on this team, is a national championship. And this has to get better. This is the weakness of the football team. We'll get into, is Texas good enough to stop the run to win a national championship? Guess what? That actually is. I was wrong on that. That is in the positive. We'll get into that after this, but I'm going to jump into your comments real quick. Run blocking has been mediocre since the staff took over. Might take the last few Herman offensive line leaving for that to turn around. I don't think Flood can fix what Hand taught them. The problem is, I'm trying to think. So Kelvin Banks isn't Tom Herman. Jake Majors is. I'm going to be honest. Hayden Connor? I think he is. Right guard isn't. Right tackle isn't. So 3 out of 5 aren't Herb Hand offensive linemen. But I see the point. Double D, I've liked when Wisner has carried. Yes, he runs with the most ferocity and heart of anyone on this team. And honestly, at this point, that's kind of what I want. For whatever reason, to me, Jaden Blue looks a lot slower than he did last year. I don't know if he put on the weight. Well, I know he put on weight. Is that because he put on the weight? Is he hiding an injury? I do not know. But right now, he's killing his draft stock. Like going into the year, I thought second round pick. Right now, I'm thinking 4th or 5th round. He's just not a good running back. He's more of an offensive weapon. But the problem is he fumbles too often. So teams do not like that. Again, the guy that came to my mind who I saw fumble a lot in college in the NFL was Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson is a top 7 running back of all time, guys. He can get away with that. Jaden Blue isn't a top 7 running back of all time. Fumbling every 38 touches is god-awful. It's terrible. In the NFL, those guys get about 400 touches as a starting running back. That means you're fumbling like 12 times a year. That is atrocious. This I completely agree with. Great comment here, Dan, and I completely agree with this. Bichon and Jonathan covered up a lack of the running lanes developed by this O-line. Completely agree with that. So for Bichon and Jonathan Brooks, they both had great vision, and they were both patient enough to wait, and then if there was a hole, they were able to hit it. Right now, we're not seeing that. I don't see the patience with any of these running backs, honestly. They're kind of just whole go, whereas like, oh, let's see to the develop, and then go. That's why I compared Jonathan Brooks to Le'Veon Bell, because he would dance behind the line of scrimmage and then find the hole. And then Roshan Johnson was just big enough and strong enough. He's like, screw it, I can make my own hole. We don't have either of those guys right now. We're kind of caught in the middle, and that's what I'm saying. We have like 3 number 2 backs right now. We do not have a number 1 back. I was right when I said Jonathan Brooks was spectacular and one of the best backs in the country before last season going into the season. And I was dead wrong on saying that Cedric Baxter shouldn't have been the starter over Jaden Blue. We are missing Cedric Baxter dearly or sorely in this offense. Like, it's bad, guys. It just is not good right now. And I was wrong. I thought we'd be better in running the football than we are. And I didn't think these injuries would matter as much, but they do matter. They do matter right now. One way I'll celebrate my birth week is I'm going to make sure I pre-ordered the Disputed National Championship College Football's Historical. Yes, right there. Mark just came out with a book, so please go over there and look at that. But does Texas have an elite defense? I'm not sure. That is also a great question, Adam, because when you look at some of these teams on here, we'll go through them all. So this first team, I don't know. Did Ohio State have an elite defense? They had elite players, but throughout the whole year, I don't think they were elite. 2015 Alabama, I would say they were elite. 2016 Clemson wasn't really that elite. 2017 Bama, I would say was elite. 2018 Clemson, I would say it was elite. I thought that defense was very good. 2019 LSU was not elite. Alabama 2020 was not elite. 2021 Georgia was. 2022 Georgia was. 2023 Michigan was. So Yes, that's another thing too. There's ways you can cover up a bad running game, and that's with a good quarterback and a really good defense. Right now, we definitely have the quarterback. My concern would be the defense. I do not know. Hopefully, you guys can still hear me because I know my Wi-Fi is acting like crap for whatever reason. It always does it at night too. I don't know why that is, but I agree with that, Adam. Definitely for sure. But yeah, again, when is the morning show in Connecticut? Yeah, it's 10 a.m. Eastern time. That's Eastern time zone, same as me. Yeah, I mean, that was a great point by you, Adam, because I do not know. I just can't answer that right now because we have yet to face. We're not going to face an elite offense till I don't even know if Georgia's got an elite offense, but that is the first elite offense we'll play. And I honestly don't know if they'll be able to test us because they don't have the weapons. But I will say this, Adam. I don't know if we need an elite defense this year because I think there's very few elite offenses. The only ones that come to mind are Ohio State, Alabama, and Tennessee. Every other team, to me, they're going to rank as an elite offense because offense, to me, is down this year and quarterback play is down, but they're not truly an elite offense. And we have one as well. I think there's 5 elite offenses in college football. Now, the death penalty for Texas would be having to face all 3 of those on the way to the national championship. That actually, to me, if we face Alabama, Tennessee, and Ohio State in any order going to the playoff or going to the national championship, we are not winning the national championship. Are not going to. And by the way, if anyone has to, I don't think they're going to be able to do that. It's going to be very interesting if that is a road someone has to go down and face every elite offense possible. Now, do I think we could win 2 of those games? Yes, but having to face 3 week in and week out is going to kill you. On our schedule, Georgia is the only one I can even think of. Like A&M doesn't have an elite offense. Oklahoma doesn't have an elite offense. Kentucky definitely doesn't have an elite offense. Vanderbilt doesn't have an elite offense. Florida doesn't have an elite offense. So that's the thing too. It's going to be very interesting. And yes, hey man, I am here to be unbiased and give facts and if they're not facts, then opinions that have facts behind them. But it's going to be interesting because that very good point by Dan also. Maybe Arkansas, I'm going to be honest, what I saw from Taylor Green, I was highly disappointed. I actually bet on Arkansas in that game, and he was very inaccurate, made some mistakes with the football. So I don't know. And that's the thing, too. I don't know how good A&M's defense is because when I looked at the stats of them when we broke down Arkansas and A&M on the SEC channel, they don't really look good defensively. So I think our defense is just as good as A&M. So I'm not really worried about Arkansas. I am worried about Georgia. Georgia is the one that worries me. I will say this, though. Alabama's secondary, I do think that is the one portion I am confident in that they're better, or that Texas secondary is better than Alabama's. That is the weakness of Alabama's defense. I think front 7 wise, I think I think Anthony Hill would be the best linebacker of the group, but you guys have 2 of them, Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson. So I would take those 2 over David Benda, honestly. And then on the defensive line, I can't believe I'm going to say that. I think Colin Simmons is the best defensive lineman between the 2 groups. But secondary, I would take us. So it's going to be interesting. It really is. Not many questions have been answered for me about my team. The only questions that have been answered are Jahdae Barron has moved very well to outside cornerback. He's played phenomenal. Quinn Ewers took that next step. Now he just needs to stay healthy. And then our wide receivers aren't as talented as last year, but we have a deeper wide receiver room. So it's going to be very interesting. Are you saying that if Texas face Ohio State or Alabama, you think Texas will lose? I'm sure those games would be hard to predict. I'm saying if we played them back-to-back in the college football playoff, I think there's a better than 50% chance we lose. And then if you add Tennessee into that, my death road for Texas would be Tennessee somehow. I don't think maybe it could happen. There might be a scenario out there, but play Alabama in the first playoff game, or Ohio State or Tennessee, and then play the other 2 back-to-back after that. So basically playing those 3 in a row, we're not going to win a national championship. I don't think that's possible at this point. I don't see that happening. Someone would have to fall off a cliff to do that. One of the 4 teams, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, or Tennessee. Those are the only teams, honestly, that scare me right now. Like, I watched Oregon versus UCLA. What the absolute hell was that? Oregon is not that good. Dylan Gabriel is an overrated quarterback. I've said that for a very long time. He is good, and he is good compared to the quarterbacks that there are this year. If you put Dylan Gabriel into last year, he is just another guy. Like, he's not Michael Penix. He's not Caleb Williams. He's not Drake May. He's not Shedeur Sanders. He's not any of those guys. He's just not. Simmons and Vosick should both be in the game on obvious passing downs. Dan, yes, they should. And you saw that. By the way, you saw that. They did that on obvious passing situations. You saw Simmons and Vosick in the game because the staff realizes those are our best two pure pass rushers. People give Baron Sorrell crap. He's not great against the passing because he doesn't really get to the quarterback. He's a phenomenal weak side run defender. Phenomenal. He will get drafted in the first 4 rounds as that, by the way, because he's a really good run defender. Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I haven't seen you in the comments, and I always appreciate you calling in and talking with Mark and those guys. And guys, I think we're going to try to do a call-in show next week for the Oklahoma game. I may try to get an Oklahoma guest on as well. I'd love to do that, so it's going to be interesting. So I do want to get to our stopping the run on the defensive side of the ball, because that I was wrong on. We're actually good enough there, and I will show that with stats. So going back to Ohio State again. Ohio State as a team they only gave up 3.9 yards per carry. Alabama as a team in 2015 only gave up 2.4 yards per carry. Clemson as a team only gave up 3.7 yards per carry in 16. 2017 Alabama, this is elite number right here. Anything below 3 is elite. 2017 averaged 2.8 yards per carry given up. 2018 Clemson, again, another elite defense, 2.7 yards per carry given up. 2019 LSU, but again, they are carried by their offense. They don't need an elite run defense. They need a good enough run defense. That's what they got, 3.8 yards per carry. 20 Bama, same thing as LSU, but a little bit better, 3.3 yards per carry. 21 and 22 Georgia, elite, 2.6 yards per carry and 2.9 yards per carry in back-to-back national championship years. And Michigan, 3.0 yards per carry. I went into this before the year thinking Texas needed to do what they did 2 years ago. It is outlandish to think Texas was going to do what they did last year against the run, which was like 2.8 yards per carry. You have the Outland Award Trophy winner, and you had a guy in Byron Murphy that's doing very well in the NFL already, and a guy that I think is like Chris Jones coming out. Like, he's phenomenal, guys. So it was dumb to think we were going to be at that number. I believe 2 years ago we were I think we were at like 3.5 or 6, and I said we need to be at that number. Because that had Keandre Coburn and Mora Ojimo, both NFL players, but both low-level draft picks. And you have Alfred Collins at the defensive tackle position, who will be like a 3rd or 4th round pick. And then Vernon Broughton has played himself into probably a 5th or 6th round pick. So you actually have better players than 2 years ago, and it's proven. So on average, with the run defenses, those teams only gave up 3.11 yards per carry. Texas gives up 3.2. That is good enough. You keep that, you can win a national championship, period. And we've actually gone against teams that really haven't tried to pass versus us. They've wanted to run the football. Michigan wanted to run the football. UTSA wanted to run the football. Mississippi State definitely wanted to run the football. The first 8 or 9 plays of the game versus Mississippi State were runs. So this team, actually, I was wrong. I will admit it. Post-game show, I was too emotional about that. This team can win a national championship with this run defense. The running game on the other side, like we just talked about, is a whole nother thing. But with this run defense can win a national championship. So I was wrong on that. And guys, I will be here to tell you when I'm wrong, and I will be here to tell you when I'm right. I was wrong on that, or wrong on this. I was right on the other one. So 50%. I'm going to be honest, I usually bat around 65, 70. So I'm a little bit angry with the 50%. But that is my analysis of those two things. The running game, that is what is holding us back. It needs to be worked on, and it doesn't need to be a lot better. In my opinion, if Jane Blue can get up to 5.1 or 2 yards per carry, and this team as a whole can be at 5.1 or 2 yards per carry, they can win a national championship. But we'll see. We'll see if it happens.